Alright, so this is going to be a long-winded review on the ASV RT-135, but if you're like me, you're getting ready to take out a second mortgage that's probably more than your house, you're going to want an in-depth review. So this is that review. I've got 140 hours on this machine, and it's seen some use, and I've definitely got some feedback here. So it's going to be a long one, but it's going to be worth it. It's going to give you some great insight from someone who's using this thing 10 to 12 hours a day. So normally I'd do a kind of review video on something that's brand new like this right away, but I really don't have any prior experience with one of these. I didn't have anything to compare it to. I'm new to tree shredding, so I wanted to put it through its paces before I dropped a video. You see, like when Lincoln comes out with a new welder, I like to review those right away. On this one though, it was broken when we got it. Spent a little while at the shop getting repaired. Then we had to wait for the government to get their grant figured out and straightened out, which is still screwed up at this point, but we're shredding trees now. I was back in the shop for a month and a half. I got it back, ran it for 5 hours till it broke again. So yeah, I've been down on videos for a while, but that's because I was planning on doing this review series on this machine and the shredder, and unfortunately it was in jail at the dealership getting fixed. So I just got it back today. Gonna hurry up and get this review done before it breaks again. In this video we're just focusing on the skid steer. I'll have a separate video for the shredder. So I tested out the RT-120, and that's what I wanted to order. I couldn't quite get my SBA loan to get it bought in time. Then it sold out. They were priced at about $86,000 at that point. Ended 2020, beginning of 2021. This thing, so I'll go over the ordering process. We ordered this, waited 1 week short of a year for it to arrive. And to our surprise, when it showed up, it was not an RT-120. It was in fact an RT-135, and we were basically told you can pay the upgrade fee to take this machine home, or you can go find something else. So that wasn't a very good beginning to the story, because we ended up paying around $135,000 for this unit, and they just keep going up in price. Today they're at roughly $150 to $160, and it's not because the materials to produce this have increased. I think it's more about greed. Basically they're saying, well, people are willing to pay for it because they want it, so we can charge it. Well, it's way too much money for a machine that's spent 3 months in the shop getting fixed with less than 100 hours on it. So yeah, initial thoughts not too positive, but that was the ordering process. We kind of got shoved between a rock and a hard place and forced to pay even more money for something that we already waited way too long for to arrive. So we got it. There's some definite notable differences from the 120 that I had test driven at the time of putting the order in. So the side windows, they're all open. You got these big vents here. The 120s had this big kind of expanded metal, the style with circles covering up both sides. So visibility is much better on this than the 120. I'm told that a lot of things got improved, like suspension wise. It's got I guess it's a twin torsion beam axle, and basically you just set your track tension by turning this rod, and then this jam nut locks it in place. We've had some major problems with that coming loose. That was one of the things that had to get fixed, because you're only supposed to have to adjust it after like 50 hours, and then not again for 500 hours at a time. It works awesome. It's very simple looking. You know, it's all open. So as far as throwing tracks go, if you throw one, that's supposed to be a warranted thing where the dealer will come out and slap it back on for you. But I get pretty aggressive shredding the trees, and knock on wood, I haven't thrown one, and I pray to God I don't. So as far as other features that I know are different from the 120, it's the same 3.8 QSF Cummins. It's just a different tune. The old one, the 120, was 120 horse. The 135, I think it's 132 horse. Not sure why they call it the 135, but definitely an improvement on power. It's just the tune. It's the same engine family as like the R2.8 crate engine that is the same thing as the ISF or the QSF 2.8. It's just a different tune. This engine could be making over 200 horse, but you got to keep it low for longevity, and so you're not tearing other stuff up. So engine-wise, it's been awesome. It did seem like it burned a little bit of oil during the break-in period. The variable geometry turbo is sweet. You can hear that spooling up when you're powering up a hill or something. It's very efficient despite the stupid DEF and DPF. I'm running about basically somewhere between 4 to 6 gallons per hour running the shredder, and then if I'm just moving dirt, it's only about 2 to 3 gallons an hour. So I'm happy with the efficiency. It'd be awesome to see what it was without the emissions crap on it, but power wise, it's the most powerful skid steer made as of today. It's also the heaviest and has the highest lifting capacity. So this thing basically weighs 13,000 pounds. The shredder is about 2,600. So we're over 15,000 pounds with this setup as it is right now. The lifting capacity is about 11,000 pounds on the skid steer. Now I got these 5-ton beds over here off the 939 series, and those stick out so far out, you know, it's 8 feet wide, so you get all that weight sticking out. And I found the tipping point of this thing, because those only weigh 2,600 pounds also. But as far as dirt moving goes, you know, I've got like an 84-inch bucket sitting over there, got all my attachments lined up over there, and that bigger bucket, you know, that's a lot of weight. It still handles that like it's child's play. So the lifting capacity is definitely awesome. You got real easy to access grease points just all the way along here. The only spot, you know, a lot of tree debris likes to collect in here, but it's easy to get out. Hasn't been a problem yet. The problem I have had is with this plate on the front hitting some of the hydraulic connections, like on my grapple bucket. That plate smashes into the connectors. Our other skid steer has a big opening right there. So you have this real thick, I believe it's a polycarbonate, basically a bulletproof windshield, and you know, it's going to get ripped off eventually. I see the cover for this nut is already missing, but this nut has come off twice, so it got Loctited on. I Loctited it on, and this is actually the longest it's worked now. So that was not a lock nut, it wasn't a serrated flange nut, just a standard nut, and it has vibrated right off. Kind of trying to work with the wind so we don't have a ton of wind noise, so I'm just going to kind of move around to the direction where there's no wind. Alright, so you got your diesel cap in here. It is lockable, and it's got a retention chain. This area really likes to plug up with dirt though. So one of my biggest complaints about this whole machine is probably the fuel filler neck, because I spent the big bucks on the big electric fuel pump so that I could pump out diesel as fast as reasonable to reduce downtime, because you do have to fuel this up every day, and any time spent fueling up is time spent not working. And out of the 3 clicks, I'm only guaranteed to be able to put it on the lowest flow. Sometimes if I clock it just right, you kind of have to clock it to about 3 o'clock. I can get it to the 2nd click without it tripping, but I can never just hold the nozzle wide open and get the full whatever. I forget what it is. It's like 10 gallons or 15 gallons a minute. But I certainly would never be able to use the PTO driven pump on the fuel truck to fill it up, because the filler neck just does not allow that diesel to flow fast enough down into the tank. So that is definitely something ASV needs to work on when they revise this for the next generation, because it's a pain in the ass right now trying to fuel this thing up. You've got your AC condenser up top. A lot of people mistakenly think that's the hydraulic oil cooler, but it's not. So on the back here, I really don't know why we bought the forestry unit. You can see that on the side, RT-135 forestry. And they don't just standardize their options that to me are just common sense. Like they got this big kind of like a rear grill guard essentially. It's not a standard option. It should be, because all the more protection you can have for your rear end, the better. You can see I do use the bumper bars a lot. It's real easy to get into a scenario where you have to hurry up and back up before a tree falls on you. You don't have time to be aware of what's immediately behind you. So you've got reverse lights You do have a backup camera. They do seem well protected. You have front lights, only one pair though, and the way they angle forward, they actually hit this bar and you really can't see squat in front of you. You really need to have two pairs of front lights at different angles so you can see kind of above and below your front end attachment. And then for whatever goofy reason, side lights are not standard. And there's a lot of problems with hardware vibrating loose on this machine. So these screws have vibrated loose. Some of these have vibrated loose underneath. This is where the side light would go. They want $500 for the kit. We'll get into that in a future video where I do some modifications, because the lights are $16 on Amazon. So there's really no excuse for that kind of price markup. It's a simple wiring harness, switch. Again, the switch is $15 on Amazon. I'll give you kind of an overview shot of this. The engine's tucked way back in there. I pray to God I never have to dig into it. The cab does tilt up so you can access things better. And there's also a plate behind the seat so you can get to the front of the engine. But this is just the top end. Got your intercooler on top. Got these cables here. Apparently these used to be fiberglass, and I can see that would be a terrible idea because they do take some beating. Now we have had this hinge break off, which is most likely caused by the pins being welded on misaligned. Because you have three, they got to be perfectly in line with each other. So basically the pin, one half has a shank that's turned down that sits inside the other part, and then one's welded on either side. It's greasable, but all I did was open this one morning and it just sheared right off, and it is a heavy door. But you got your fuel filter there, two-stage fuel filter system. You've got a two-stage air filter system. You've got your DPF tank, and for whatever goofy reason that has a locking cap, and that can be an absolute bear to get that off. What I really hate is you have this switch is for a light so you can see your hydraulic fluid level, and you can't even hardly see it. Like, you'd smash your head in there and you're still barely able to tell what's going on. So I really dislike that. If that DEF tank wasn't there, you'd have all the room in the world to look at it. The DEF tank also really likes to hold a bunch of debris in here, which is a huge fire hazard. So end of every day when I get done shredding, I blow everything off. Try to get it as clean as possible with the leaf blower. Over on this side you got the DPF, which is a huge fire hazard. My neighbors actually burned to the ground because it got hot enough, and there was the oil feed line for the turbo loosened up. Got a couple drops of oil on the cedar debris, and that whole machine burned to the ground. So, not a fan of this thing. I've burned myself on it already too. Got a nice big battery. It's tucked in there. It's pretty hard to get at, and stuff really likes to accumulate in there. You do have your pre-wired block heater in there though, which is nice. Nothing mounted to this door. They have this screen, which seems fairly robust, but as you can see, I have sticks that are trying to wedge their way between the mesh and the door. So I'll have to probably unbolt this and clean that out periodically. So you've got your hydraulic cooler and your radiator, and then you got this giant fan on the back, if you can see that. And you can program the fan's frequency, but it'll reverse direction. So it'll be, blowing cool air through the heat exchangers, and then I think I have it set to every 5 minutes. It'll reverse for 15 or 30 seconds and blow all the dust off the back. And that also blows all the stuff off the top that's light enough. So that part's awesome. That's kind of a play right out of Gleaner's playbook. The Gleaner combine made down in Heston at Agco. They came up with the idea originally for the reversing fan during harvest. It definitely saves a lot of wear and tear on the machine. You do have, right in there is a cabin air filter, and so you do have to get up there and blow that AC condenser out. And I don't want to go into the problems we've had in great detail. That's going to be its own video, but basically we bought the machine, the AC never worked, so we took it in at 50 hours, and at 60 hours it was broken again. We kind of just limped into winter so we could use it, you know, throughout the winter. Didn't need to worry about the AC too much. So while we're on the back end, before I close this all up, something that's really aggravating to me. So they have a rear winch option for these, and they've gone through the effort to plumb in the hydraulics. They've gone through the effort to program it into the computer, but they don't offer it as a factory option. It's only a dealer installed option. The dealer wants about $18,000 to put one on. They say it's extremely labor intensive. You got to pull all this crap off the back. They have to hack this thing up and modify it. It's just asinine. Why would you waste the customer's money putting all this stuff on there that you can't even use? It's just, it makes no sense. If it's an option, it needs to be a deal, you know, a factory option. And if it's such an expensive and labor-intensive pain to put it on, then don't put any of it on, because $160,000, you know, who knows what it costs to put all that crap in there. But if 95% of people aren't going to get it installed, then we're just being forced to pay for crap we'll never use. It's just a huge waste of money. So I think it was going to be something like a 17,500 pound winch, somewhere thereabouts, ballparking it. And it's going to be hydraulic, worn. So I priced them on the internet. They're $4,600, but they want over $10,000. They want almost $11,000 for the winch. So they're marking that up, almost tripling the price on that. And then they want a ton in labor, and then of course you have tax on top of it. So it comes out to be about $18,000 to put the damn winch on the back. And yes, I have needed it, because when you're by yourself like I am and you get stuck, you have to have a wireless winch, or you have to have a winch on this with controls in the cab. Because when your butt's not in that seat, the parking brake comes on, and dragging 15,500 pounds of dead weight is going to put a lot of strain on anything. So if you have two people, you might be able to pull this out with a pickup, or like a medium duty truck like that, or dump truck. But the only way I've ever been able to get out is to get in my 939 series 6x6. It weighs 30,000 pounds and just drag the dead weight. So that's why the winch is a must on these. I think it'd make more sense to make it a standard option, and then maybe give people the option to forego it. But if they're building these just to stock on the lot, I think they should just come with them. It's a no-brainer. For what you're paying, you want to be able to use this for as many things as you can. Last thing you want to do is have this huge expensive machine that has all sorts of capabilities and then limit it to just one use, you know. Speaking of which, we'll get into attachments, because they keep saying that the 135's made for shredding. People aren't going to take this attachment off, yada yada yada. We use it for everything. I mean, come on, look at what it costs. You're not going to buy this and just use it for one thing. You're going to buy it and use it for everything you can. While we're here, this needs to be cut off, and I'll be cutting this off. Why? Why? I mean, I understand having the guard, but having these cutouts makes, well, you can make some sense of it. They're trying to prevent debris from coming in and wedging in here. But what they've done is they've created a knife's edge right up against our $1,000 high flow hoses, and that's already getting cut into. Fault of the ASV. So I'll be trimming this off to hopefully eliminate that problem. And then the last thing I'll point out before we hop inside and get out of the wind here is the coupler system. It's got this case valve drain, so you push this, that releases your pressure so you can pop the couplers off easily. Now, the first coupler failed at about 100 hours. I couldn't get it to come off. They put a new one on, and in less than 17 hours, the second one failed. And we disconnected it and plugged it back in twice when it was new to make sure it worked. I ran it for about 17 hours, went to take it back to get the AC fixed, and that was already broken again. So that's a problem point. I don't know why. It's really weird, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. Now we'll dive into the cab. So first and foremost, it's got 2 release levers so you can take the door off. I've tried doing this by myself. This door is so freaking heavy. You got to have 2 people to do that. Next, I'll point out the windshield wiper fluid reservoir. They need to have some kind of mark on here telling you what the max level is, because if you fill it up above just where it's at now, which is only like half full, it comes flying out. This cap doesn't really seal, and it comes flying out of there all over the floor. So you've got your horn right here, which will make your ears bleed if you honk it and you have the door open, so don't do that. It's really loud. So we've got an air ride seat, and we've got just a standalone air compressor. It's electric, and it's powered all the time without the key. The air ride seat's awesome. The seat slides forward and back. Not very easily, but it does. You do have a vent down here for the HVAC. You've got a fire extinguisher in the back, which my neighbor's proof. You need that in case you have a fire start, so it doesn't burn it all the way to the ground. You've got an emergency escape hatch out the roof. And I don't know if that's a one-time use only, because it has like this rope seal, and I'm not sure if this has failed already too or not. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be able to see that, but I think on the case skid steers, that's like a one-time use only, and then you have to replace a gasket to keep the rainwater out. So you can tilt the seat forward, and we've got, I can't zoom out any further than this, but we've got a flap on the back of the seat, keep the manual in there. Then you can pull this cover off and get into the back of the engine area, and you can see where our coolant was leaking in. We had a severe coolant leak, but more on that later. Interior features, there's a lot that could be improved in here. We got a phone holder here, which is nice. We've got USB output and an aux cable input. This doesn't put out enough juice to charge your phone though, so if it did, that would be convenient. But instead, you got to come over here to the cigarette lighter to plug your charger in, and then you have to dangle your cable across, so that sucks. There looks like there's plenty of room right there to have the cigarette lighter. Cup holder down there is nice for sure. You got your key there. Light switches. This would be your side light switch. I'm guessing this would be your winch switch. Heads up display, I can show you all that. Got our mirror. And then one of the worst things in the world, this bar that comes down is probably part of the rollover proof cab, but I've hit my head into this, and then this freaking light, which has made me shout many 4-letter words, is in a horrible spot and has a horrible switch, because this sticks down, and I've literally cut my head open on this multiple times now. So I'm going to be removing this whole light fixture, because it's a major danger to your head when you're not 5'6". We've got the HVAC system, and it's pretty weird because instead of pulling the air through either the heater core or the evaporator, they pull it through both. And so you'll notice even on a cold day, if you turn the air to cold but leave the AC off, you'll get hot air because it's flowing through the heater core. So it's been in to get that valve replaced. That's what was leaking behind the chair. Kind of a poor design there though. It should pull air through one or the other, but not both. And apparently there's no defrost mode. You can't actually run the AC compressor with the heater with this turned over to heat. Oh, and you can actually, I've never noticed that before, but you can actually hear the valve moving. So you definitely don't want to sit there and play with this a bunch, because that is a moving electronic part. So over here we have the parking brake, the attachment for the loader. If you press this and hold it on, it'll pull the pins up. If you open the door, it automatically puts them back down. So you got to keep that in mind, because I forget that all the time. Then we have this rough terrain. It's supposed to be like a hydraulic ride damping feature. They don't activate this on the forestry models, which is stupid. They think, ASV said they don't think a forestry unit's ever going to get used to move dirt. It's just dumb. You've got your hydraulic controls for your hookups, and then this is supposed to be kind of a self-leveling bucket feature. So since the way these arms move, since the way they articulate, if you have your bucket sitting like this, as you lift it up, it tilts back, so it would automatically keep that position as you move it if you hit this button. But on the forestry unit, they don't think we would want that, so they didn't activate it. Everything's pretty much there, but we can't use it. Our windows are very simple. The window just slides against these seals, that's it. Haven't had any problems with leaking. These seals actually sit above that, so I have had water come in here, but it all drains out eventually. Looks like we've got some diagnostic ports back here. We've got speakers. It's a pretty decent sound system. You can hook it up to your Bluetooth, so you can have your phone hooked up to it and play music through the phone if you want to do that. I've tried taking calls through it, because it does have the microphone in here for that. I'm guessing it's right there, but that doesn't work when it's running. I mean, people can't hear me. It's too loud. You do have a throttle pedal there. Otherwise, your RPM is right there. Joysticks, they're awesome. No complaints there. You do have like a little holder thing here, but by the time you adjust your restraints, it's kind of worthless, and you get to bouncing around, stuff falls out of there. I wish it was a little bigger, because I would actually consider putting my phone there, since I have to power it through here when I'm charging it. And I also kind of wish I had a cigarette lighter back here, because then I could just plug it in, and then if this was a little bigger, I could set my phone there. Or have another one of those these phone pouches right here. That would be even better. But you can adjust the height on this. I'm not going to do it because it's not the easiest thing to hold in position and tighten down. It'll take you a couple tries, but you can loosen these up. It's a screw. This is just a handle. You can pull it out to get it in a better position. You can raise the height on these. The lap bar comes down. You can move this forward or back. You loosen that, and you loosen this guy, and then this rotates forward or back. Now the thing I hate about this is you have this real nice ergonomic curvature on the bottom, but then you have this sharp corner. That's what you're gonna hit, and I've hit it. This just digs into your chest, you know. And then the flat top and the screw head sticking up, these should be flathead cap screws, not button heads, because it's just not a pleasant thing to squeeze yourself into when you're driving and you stop abruptly because you get caught up on a tree stump. So that shape is just not friendly. I would probably just make it a full circle, honestly. I don't see why they want to have the flat on there. It's not like you're ever resting your arm on it. Your arms are resting over here. And yes, that is blood from my head. Yes, I really hate that light switch. Alright, so that's pretty much it for everything other than this heads-up display. So let's go through this and I'll show you what I can show you. So first complaint on here. Okay, this machine's off. It's cold. And it basically, if you compare it to any other water temp gauge on a car, you're already at operating temp according to this. But what actually happens is you have these couple little graduations. This is your hydraulic oil temp. But this will get up to operating temp and it'll be about here. And that's only 135 degrees. And by the time it gets to that line, you know, the light starts coming on screaming that it's overheating, you need to shut it down. So they need to kind of reposition this and zoom it out, because this shouldn't be green when it's cold. That's just not right. That's just poor calibration. You got your DEF fluid level here. You've got your fuel tank level here, and I forgot to mention that. So it's got like a 52-gallon tank, and the most I've ever put in is about 44 gallons, because the light comes on and it starts screaming at you, and it beeps and it beeps and it beeps and it beeps and it drives you nuts. So finally you go fill it up, and then you find out you could have run the machine for another 2 hours before you really had to go fill up. You know, obviously operating on a hill makes the fluid, or the diesel fluid level sensor move around a bunch, so that kind of skews things. But it'd be nice if they'd calibrate it so it wouldn't scream at you until there was a little bit less in the tank, because you're not really getting to fully utilize that 50+ gallons of fuel. But it's a hell of a lot better, basically double the capacity of the RT-120s. So that would have drove me nuts. I think honestly the fuel tank size alone is enough to sell me into an RT-135 over a 120, because otherwise you'd have to stop. For what I'm doing, I'd have to stop at lunch and refuel, and that'd get really old, because I'll just go out and I'll work for 10 to 12 hours and come back. Like, I won't stop. So if I had to stop every 4 to 6 hours to refuel, that would suck. Now, I got a big full gauge for your battery voltage. I believe this is oil pressure. Then here's your water temp. And I've never seen this really get much above 180. Like the cooling system, the engine coolant system, I think it's really well designed on these, because it's been 100 degrees and I'm working at full load, non-stop, 10 hours. And that doesn't ever even get anything above 180. RPM, this would be your meter bar for your water temp. You got your hours here. You got a job clock. So I run this for when I'm cutting trees, keep track of how many hours I actually have cutting versus using the machine for other stuff. But then you can go into all this stuff. So this is where you can go down here to the hydraulic winch. See, so that's already in here, and it's not a factory option. That just blows my mind. But you can go into diagnostics and go to quick data, and then it gives you all sorts of stuff. So you got specific battery voltage, specific DEF level and a percentage, fuel level at a percentage, and then the actual number for the hydraulic oil temp. So they do the coolant temp and a number on here, and I've requested ASV to change the screen to actually just put the number underneath here or above here, because I don't want this. They need to fix the bar, but I would much rather just see a number than some arbitrary bar. And you got coolant level and percentage, which that's pretty nice. Coolant temp, again, that's redundant. Your fuel rate, what you're running, I don't really find that to be very accurate. Intake manifold pressure, aka boost. Intake manifold, air temp. So that'd be what your air temp is after the intercooler. engine torque, that's kind of cool. It tells you like the load. Engine wait to start lamp. I don't know why that's all the way deep into this screen. That doesn't make any sense to me. Speedometer, and I guess I've never even read all this yet. But you got an odometer on there. That's pretty cool. Water and fuel, yes or no? No. Okay, so in the manual it says there's an inclinometer, and this machine can be operated up to 45 degrees forward to aft or side to side. Talking to ASV, they said it's actually like 30 degrees, but either way, it'd be awesome if they would display the inclinometer on here so you can see your two angles, because yes, I have needed that to know when the hydraulics are going to shut off, because the hydraulic oil level will fall below the operating point when you're tilted too far downward, and it'll shut the shredder off. And it'll also give me a good idea if I'm going to tip over, because sometimes I just get in the zone and I quit being scared about the angles, and it'd be nice to just be able to see it up on the screen. Then you've got your turtle for slow, and if I would turn this on, a rabbit would appear telling me I'm going fast. So that is the long-winded part 1 review of the ASV 135. So I'm going to be coming out with at least 2 more parts for this video. One's going to go over all of the warranty fixes, the customer service with the dealer, and ASV or lack thereof. And I'm going to have another video about modifications, you know, to make it safer, more productive, and easier to operate. So we'll have hopefully a video coming out fairly soon with the modifications on that, and then we'll also have another review video on the Lofness Bad Axe disc mulcher attachment. So thanks for watching. I really sincerely hope this helps you make your decision on if you want to invest in one of these or not. When this thing works, it is badass. It is super productive. If everything's working right and you're not bashing your head into the ceiling, it's comfortable to operate. It's just, I've had so few hours where this has actually functioned properly that I'm kind of on the fence about how I feel about them, if I'd buy another one or not, because eventually that's the plan. I want to buy another one, but there's nothing else out there that's better than this. So even though this thing's not perfect, it's far from it, it's also far better than all of its competition. So if you take that into account, yes, I would buy this before I bought any other brand of skid steer. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.